Hello, welcome to Wounds to Wisdom Author Storytelling Night. This is part of The Power of Our Story, and it is a book that 29 wonderful protectors were willing to share their story in the hopes that others can heal from their stories. So on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we have a weekly storytelling evening where each one of our 29 authors of our book, Wounds to Wisdom, Healing Through Veteran and First Responder Narratives, will read their story from the book. We are a community where veterans, first responders, and all protectors can connect, share their experiences, and heal together. We're dedicated to building a tribe of servant leaders, supporting one another through life's challenges, and empowering each other to move forward with strength and purpose. Our weekly groups and stories remind us that no one heals alone. So tonight, I want to introduce Richard T. Oakley, otherwise known as Rich. So he writes, before joining the DEA in 1974, Rich Oakley was a police officer in New Brunswick, New Jersey. He joined the department on September 10th, 1967. After graduating from the New Jersey State Police Academy, Rich was assigned to the Patrol Division and was later promoted to the rank of detective, assigned to the Narcotics Bureau. Rich has 30 years of law enforcement experience, 23 of which were spent with the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, and positions that included Special Agent in the New York Field Division, Special Agent in the Newark Field Division, Division Training Coordinator, Newark, New Jersey, and Supervisory Special Agent in the San Francisco Field Division. He also served at the DEA Headquarters in Arlington, Virginia, as staff coordinator for the Policy and Procedures Unit, special assistant to the Deputy Administrator for Operations, special assistant to the DEA Administrator, executive secretary of the DEA Career Board, and finally retiring as Assistant Special Agent in Charge. Rich's career culminated in several significant drug operations, which led to many awards, commendations, and proclamations for his service. So, Rich, it is wonderful to welcome you on tonight and to hear your story.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. And thanks everyone for being here. How's my sound? Is it good? My story is titled A Rookie Cop's Longest Ride. My story began 6 months out of the academy as a 24-year-old rookie, a patrolman in New Brunswick, New Jersey. It's a story that has haunted me throughout my 30-year law enforcement career. The trauma I endured changed the way I look at things, people, and life. June 14th, 1968 started off as a typical workday. I reported to headquarters at 0530. Upon reporting to briefing, we were informed of the events from the previous shift and handed our assignments. I was assigned to patrol the south side sector. During my tour, I responded to several calls for service, typical stuff. I recall the day being uneventful. After my tour ended, I left headquarters and drove to my apartment. When I got home, I removed my duty belt and uniform shirt, still in my work trousers. I remembered forgetting to pick up something at the store. So I got into my 1965 Ford Mustang and headed out. I noticed three Caucasian males standing in my complex. I knew these individuals had criminal records from previous encounters. I decided to make contact to determine why they were in this area. I pulled up to where they were standing and questioned them, at which point two of the males pulled pistols on me. forcing me into the back seat of my own vehicle. One of the males took the driver's seat. One sat in the passenger seat holding a weapon on me. The third guy got in the back with me. My heart was pounding. I felt lightheaded. My palms were sweating. I knew this was the end. As we drove away, the driver turned on the radio to local news. That's when I heard these men were wanted for armed robbery. They had they robbed a Florsheim shoe store at gunpoint and fled to my neighborhood as soon as they heard of the news account. Uh, they all looked to see my reaction. That's when the threats began. One man said, "You have, you should have minded your own business." I remained silent. I didn't want to anger them. The driver stopped to pick up a black female named Jenny. She was a girlfriend of one of the men. I noticed when we were headed toward Trenton, up Route 22 east toward New York City, when we left New Jersey, I heard one of them say, "We're going for broke." They had violated the Lindbergh Law, the act making kidnapping a federal offense, allowing federal investigators the authority to pursue kidnappers across state jurisdictions. The men spoke often of killing me and dumping me along the road. I thought about my two young sons, what would happen to them? Would they be all right? How would my mom, my younger brother, and my sister take it? I could feel the rapid pulse throbbing in my neck. My breathing was labored. I had no hope of getting out alive. I was asked if I had family. I was asked their names. I told them I was married and two young sons. One of the men said he would go after my family if I ratted on them. We arrived in New York City at the intersection of 72nd Street and West End Avenue. The three men and the young woman exited my car and got lost in the crowded street. I sat frozen in my vehicle for a long time, wondering why they decided to let me go. When I returned to New Brunswick, I went to my sergeant's home to inform him of what happened. My sergeant asked me if I was armed. "Yes," I replied. The response haunted me for a long time because I wasn't armed, but I knew the department regulation required officers to carry their gun and badge off duty. I was afraid of what would happen to me if I told the truth. This was my dream job. I had only been on for 6 months. My sergeant contacted the chief, the deputy chief, and the New York City Police Department. We were told to go to the NYPD 20th precinct, the area where I was dropped off. So I drove back to New York City that evening with my sergeant, chief of detectives, the lieutenant from the a lieutenant from the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office. We met with three detectives who questioned me about the kidnapping. The NYPD put out a "be on the lookout" bolo for the three men. I knew it was going to be a long night. I provided a description of the five suspects. My adrenaline was working overtime. After questioning, I was shown a cot for the night. I futilely tried to try sleeping with the events of the day fluttering through my mind and the noise of a very active precinct. Several days later, two of the three men were located and arrested in a flop house in Manhattan. They were taken to court in New York to be prosecuted and prepared for extradition and transport to, to municipal court in New Jersey for arraignment and bail hearing. Bail was set for $25,000 each. The other two suspects and the girlfriend remained at large until July 27th, 1968, when they were all apprehended. On February 4th, 1968, the jury selection process began. Finding an impartial jury was not an easy task because of the lack of popularity for the police at the time. The next day, the jurors were given instructions by the presiding judge explaining their role and the evidence would be which would be considered. After the jurors were presented with opening statements, I was called to the witness stand and administered the oath. The oath stayed with me forever. I was asked to recount the kidnapping through a series of questions by the prosecutor. The defense took notes, and the three men who held me at gunpoint and drove me across state lines watched on. I was on the witness stand for several hours. It was not easy to maintain my composure. After lunch, the cross-examination began, an attempt to conjure up reasonable doubt. I was shaking. My chest heaved. My hands were sweaty. I felt like someone had kicked me in the gut. Each of these three defense attorneys cross-examined me, attempting to get me to admit that I wasn't kidnapped, but rather went along for the ride because I was interested in the black female. The let's see, Genie. He hammered away at the story. I lost a few times because I knew better. I lost it a few times because I knew better. The cross-examination was grueling and intense. I was emotionally drained. One of the defense attorneys got me to confess that I was not armed. Even though I testified during direct examination that I had my duty weapon with me, I was still a probationary officer. I was afraid of losing my job because of the department rule requiring off-duty officers to carry. So I initially lied to my sergeant and to the court. Once my cross-examination was complete, one of the men who was called to the witness stand, his attorney asked him what happened on June 14th, 1968. He replied, "We did not kidnap Mr. Oakley. He came with us willingly because he liked Jeannie. He also said that they knew I was a cop and that I didn't have a gun. We would never kidnap a cop," he said. By the time the closing arguments took place, I had lost hope. On February 8th, the judge gave the jury deliberation instructions. He informed them that the decision had to be unanimous. The jury was then returned to the room to begin deliberations at 5 p.m. The jury was allowed to go home for the evening. The next day, jury returned and continued their deliberations. After 3 hours, the jurors had reached a verdict. My adrenaline kicked in. I nervously watched the jurors enter the courtroom and take their seats in the jury box. The judge asked, had they reached a verdict? "Yes, Your Honor." The verdict came back not guilty. This was the second worst day of my life. I was disappointed and drained. I had left the courtroom, got into my car, and cried. I went straight to the local bar and drank for several hours, my friends trying to console me. When I got home, I didn't want to talk to anyone that day. I had begun my descent into heavy drinking. I was a functioning alcoholic. There was no counseling. Oh, man. There were no counseling resources available to deal with such trauma. We were expected to suck it up and move on. So I lived with the trauma of the kid from the kidnapping and the not guilty verdict for years. However, I did not allow that it to defeat me. I tell people facing similar trauma to tell the truth, no matter what the consequences. I tell them to share their story in a safe place and often. That is the way to healing. And I'm here to tell you, believe in yourself. Focus on your mental and physical health. Tune out the noise. Don't be distracted by the critic. Remember, you are important. I wish I had someone to give me, the 24-year-old rookie police officer in 1968, the same advice.
Rich, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your story. Before I shut off the recording, can I ask you how it felt to share, to read your story in front of a group out loud?
It, I was nervous, and but um, I felt like I was talking to a group of friends, and so it wasn't too bad, except a couple times you know, my my trembling, like my tremors were acting up, but other than that, it felt good. It felt good.
Good. Well, I really appreciate you being a voice for so many, being willing to put your story together and share it out loud so that other people can learn from it. If anybody else wants to join us in our group, I shut off the recording because we have really deep conversations. If you are a veteran, a first responder, or a caring bridge builder, you are more than welcome to come and support our authors as they read their story. So thanks again, Rich.